Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Logan, broadcasting to you today from the GBTA conference in Brussels, which is kicking off with our very first Global Sustainability Summit. I'm joined by Dr. Walker, founder of Rethinking Removals and co-founder of Curate. Dr. Walker, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, what would be the main message you would like to share with the corporate business travel market?
I think it's interesting that for quite a while this area has felt like it's a kind of nice to have, or it's a good thing to do if you want to be a good corporate citizen. But the message I'd really like to share today is that ship has sailed. That's changing now. I'm hearing more and more that this is going in the direction of compliance. So one of the real reasons to get your heads behind this is not just to be a good corporate citizen, but also to be ahead of the game. Because on the one hand, there's the new climate laws that are coming along, and this is going to be part of that compliance. On the other hand, there's new procurement rules that are coming into play that are saying we're only going to procure if it's sustainable. There's new capital costs coming in that say you get a lower capital cost if it's sustainable. And then on top of that, I think the whole voluntary space is a way of experimenting with what's going to go into compliance. If you engage with that now, you're going to be so far ahead of the game, you're going to be ready for it when it comes. And it's going to come soon. I mean, within a decade, probably less.
Okay, gosh, so tight timelines on that then?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so what do you think could be achieved in the longer term, and what should people be doing now?
I think one of the things, I mean, obviously the biggest emissions causes in the travel industry are, of course, things like aviation and shipping. We don't really have good solutions for those at the moment. So there's a lot of work going on to figure out how to get zero carbon shipping, how to get zero carbon aviation, hydrogen, electric planes, all of that. So I think in the longer term there are going to be new technological advances, but that doesn't actually help us so much now. And so what you need to do now, of course, is figure out how to reduce emissions as much as possible by not taking journeys you don't need to, and making the ones that you do take really count. And then, of course, there's also this whole vexed area of offsets. How do you handle that? So where do you think carbon offsets fit into the sustainability mix? I think the idea that you can kind of offset and kind of wash away your climate sins is also really gone away. That's very, very last decade now, and I think it's not going to play very much more. But I do think within the carbon markets there's actually quite a lot of power in using that as a way to have a strategy now that can build into something later. And what I mean by that is particularly the whole area of carbon removals. Now, at the moment, there's almost no ways to take CO2 out of the sky and keep it out. But in principle, if you want to be net zero, as 85% of global GDP generators have said either they're going to have their own net zero target or they're in a territory that's set theirs. And that means we all need to be getting down to that point where everything that goes up comes down. And that's going to mean, especially in the travel industry, that's going to mean quite a lot of carbon removals to be able to make that come into play. Now, there's lots of ways to do it, but they're all really tiny at the moment, and we need to accelerate them. And I think the big way that we can do that is by buying in advance, by committing now to say we're going to buy them when you build them, so it will be ready. And the big advantage of that is if you buy an offset, here's how it works. I put a ton of CO2 in the air, bad Gabrielle, and you put a ton of CO2 in the air, bad for you too, and so we've got 2 tons of CO2 in the air, that's bad. If I put a ton of CO2 in the air and say, I'll buy an offset from you, I'll pay you not to put your ton in the air. My ton's still there, I'm not at zero. But if I put a ton of CO2 in the air and I buy a removal, what goes up comes down and you get to zero. So what we can do now is we can actually commit to buying those removals for the emissions that we can't currently reduce and get the industry to the place where we're actually going to be able to continue to travel in the future without harming the planet.
So actually neutralising the damage that's being done.
Neutralising the damage. What goes up must come down.
Yes. Well, with that, thank you so much, Dr. Walker. It's been wonderful having you with us today. I'm Catherine Logan, broadcasting you from GBTA Conference Brussels. Thank you for tuning in.